Tropical Storm Ernesto has increased in strength. I'm Mike Naso from IPR365.com with Internet Partnership Radio, tracking Ernesto this early August as we continue to see hurricane season 2012 just start to fire up. When we look at the Atlantic Basin and the Caribbean Sea, Ernesto is really the only feature out there. You can see it there much better defined than 24 hours ago. Of course, it wasn't a tropical storm then, but there were some, including myself, wondering if this would even ever become a tropical storm. It has, it's bursting, and it is forecast to be a powerful Category 1 hurricane in about 5 days, but there are many variables that go into this on just how quick it may intensify, how strong it may get, and where it may end up, and all of those are mixed together as the track and intensity depend a lot on each other. Now, when we look at the latest on Ernesto as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time, it was at 13.4 north, 58.3 west, winds were 50, so it is a moderate tropical storm, gusting to 65. It's moving straight west, and I mean straight west, 22 miles an hour, and there doesn't seem to be any reason why this straight west path won't persist for the next day or so. If it persists after that, all bets are off. Some of the computer models show this thing continuing right into Central America. Others want to take it towards western Cuba. The general thinking, as of right now, is Ernesto will maintain itself, move through the islands as a moderate tropical storm, stay somewhat organized but not really intensify until Saturday into Sunday morning, and then begin to become a hurricane and strengthen steadily and slow down. Note the slowdown here on this map. We're talking Thursday night to Saturday night. That's a 48-hour stretch where it covers all this. Then look at Sunday night to Tuesday night, a much smaller stretch and a more curved track here off towards the northwest, indicating that Ernesto, if this track verified, would end up in the general direction of the Yucatan Peninsula, western Cuba, the channel here into the Gulf of Mexico. There is a lot of uncertainty because we need to see if Ernesto will survive, because quite frankly things don't look all that favorable right now. And so if they were favorable now, it'd be, oh, for sure this would be a hurricane in 5 days, but first we have to see if it persists into the Eastern Caribbean. If it does that, then we could be looking at a more serious hurricane down the road. I did want to note we do have those tropical storm warnings for St. Lucia, Dominica, Barbados, and the Grenadines and Martinique, Guadeloupe, all watching this system with those watches and warnings in the expectation that Ernesto will eventually bring some tropical storm force winds. Things are already getting rough in some of the islands. Here's the model guidance. You can see the UK Met is up here in western Cuba, as is the GFDL, and the consensus is somewhere west to west-northwest and then gradually bending up towards the northwest to where a landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula would seem much more likely. However, regardless, if this system does end up a strong hurricane, somebody's going to be impacted. It gets landlocked here to where it would have to be Cuba or the Yucatan, and even if it missed land and went right through the channel, we're still looking at significant impacts and then an impact on the United States. But that's not even the case then. Would there be ridging, rebuilding? What the whole idea with this system is that Ernesto will be able to survive. If it survives and it moves through the Caribbean and begins to gradually bend north as the ridging has a weakness in the Gulf, does the weakness continue to where Ernesto takes aim somewhere here at the northwest Gulf Coast, or does it rebuild to where Ernesto gets left behind and ends up spiraling west? And we had this situation in 2002, a decade ago, if you can believe it. A lot of the young people watching this might not remember. Hurricane Isidore was over western Cuba, and nobody had any idea if it was going to get caught up and just move towards the Panhandle and northwest towards the Gulf Coast, or if it get left behind by the trough. And it ended up getting left behind, and enough ridging built to push it over the Yucatan, weaken it from 934 millibar Category 3 all the way down to a very large, sloppy tropical storm, and it came back north and hit near Grand Isle, Louisiana, but it never could regain that major hurricane intensity it once had. And so we're going to probably be in the same situation with Ernesto. If Ernesto is a hurricane here and it's slowing down and it's feeling the weakness, does it then pull right into the Gulf? And if so, are we still dealing with a slow, agonizing trip north? Or are we dealing with some kind of bend west or a gradual bend back to the north after a bend west? It becomes so far out that we don't even want to speculate, but it's hard not to with these systems. Regardless, as of right now, you can still see there is shear impacting Ernesto, and that's why it's not going to strengthen any time into a hurricane, not quickly anyways. But you can definitely see shear tendencies are lowering in the Caribbean. They will be more favorable, and once it gets to the Western Caribbean, look out, because not only are we going to have favorable upper level winds, but look at these water temperatures. I mean, this alone is extremely warm, but if you get here south of Cuba or once you enter the Gulf, these are very, very warm waters. I would hate to see, you know, an 80-90 mile an hour hurricane Ernesto spinning and coiling itself up, moving in this direction over these very warm waters, because then we would have quite an opportunity for intensification. Now here's Tropical Storm Ernesto's forecast, and you can see again, not looking very good. I mean, that's not good. A hurricane aiming at land in August over favorable Western Caribbean, that is not what you want to see. So this does bear watching. But I do want to remind you of another Ernesto just 6 years ago. It seems like yesterday, but in August of '06 we had a very unfavorable El Nino towards hurricanes in the Atlantic. We had a tropical system become Tropical Storm Ernesto. It was forecast and everybody thought that it was going to move generally like that into the Gulf of Mexico, and then the tracks ended up coming further east and further east and further east. It did briefly become a hurricane, got caught up over Haiti and eastern Cuba, and could never come back all throughout its time ravaging the east coast as a tropical storm. However, we also had Tropical Storm Chantal in the summer of '01. If you remember that, that looked a lot like Ernesto did, moving straight west at 20, even 26 miles an hour. I mean, faster than Ernesto, and it opened up into a wave and then came back, but never really got together except at the very end when it almost became a hurricane and dissipated over the Yucatan. So just because right now it's looking like Ernesto could be a major player down the road doesn't mean it will be, and we have plenty of time to watch it. But when you look at that satellite imagery and you see a bursting tropical storm heading into the islands with the expectation that if it holds together enough just for a couple more days and gets into the Western Caribbean, it could become a potent hurricane and take aim at the Western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, it becomes something we're going to have to watch very carefully, no doubt about that. But I'm Mike Naso from IPR. That's the latest on Ernesto. I'll see you next time. Take care.